Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that when the Quorum of the 70 was organized on February 28, 1835, the prophet Joseph Smith chose men who had marched in Zion's camp? Learn how the men of Zion's camp walked 1,800 miles round trip on their mission to rescue saints, and how this ultimately qualified them to serve the Lord as missionaries, preaching the gospel throughout the world.
Okay, I want you to picture this. It is February 28th, 1835.
Right?
We are in Kirtland, Ohio. And if you know anything about the Midwest in February, you know it is gray, it is freezing, and the ground is basically just a mix of ice and mud.
Yeah, it is definitely not a beach vacation.
Definitely not.
Yep.
But inside this specific meeting room in Kirtland, the atmosphere is, well, it's electric, maybe even a little chaotic.
I can imagine.
You have this young church that is growing way faster than anyone expected. It feels a bit like a startup that just went viral.
Oh, that is a really good way to put it.
But they only have 3 employees to handle 1 million orders.
Yeah, that is actually a perfect analogy. The leadership structure was just buckling under the weight of the growth.
Yeah.
Joseph Smith, the prophet, was dealing with these massive administrative bottlenecks, financial stress, and people are just pouring in from all over. Something had to give.
Exactly. And that is what we are unpacking today in this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because on this specific day, in 1835, Joseph Smith convenes a meeting to solve this scaling problem.
But the solution he pulls out isn't a corporate org chart or a new middle management strategy.
No, it isn't. It is this ancient, almost mysterious concept called the Restored Order of the 70.
Which, to modern ears, sounds a bit like a secret society, doesn't it? The Order of the 70.
It really does. It sounds like something straight out of a fantasy novel. But as I was going through the source material for this deep dive, what struck me is that this wasn't about mystique at all.
No, not at all.
It was about survival. It was a completely practical, structural bridge between ancient biblical patterns and the massive global administration we see today.
It is a fascinating study on leadership, right?
Yes.
On burnout, and specifically on the grueling criteria required to get the job.
Yes.
Because as we are going to see, the resume they were looking for had absolutely nothing to do with how well you could speak in public.
Right, and that is the hook for me. I think most people just assumed church leadership in the 19th century was given to the guys who had the whitest shirts or knew the most scripture.
Yeah, the theologians.
Exactly. But the criteria for the original 70, it was almost entirely physical.
It was a brutal test of endurance.
We are definitely going to get into that, what I am calling the 1,800-mile job interview.
I love that title.
But first, let's help set the stakes for everyone listening. Why did they need this specific group right then? Why February 1835?
We'll go back to that startup analogy you used. You had the First Presidency, Joseph Smith and his counselors, and they had actually just organized the Quorum of the 12 Apostles a few weeks earlier.
Okay, so they did have some upper management in place.
They did, but the work, or the harvest, to use the scriptural term, was expanding way faster than 12 men could possibly manage.
So it is the classic dilemma. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few.
Precisely. Joseph Smith was facing a severe bottleneck. You cannot have the prophet or even the 12 apostles making every single local decision or preaching in every single town.
It just doesn't scale.
It doesn't. If they tried to do that, the whole thing would just collapse under its own weight.
Right.
They needed a mechanism to scale the ministry outward. They needed a group that wasn't stationary but mobile.
So if the High Council is the standing ministry, like the guys who stay home and govern the local stakes, the 70 are the traveling ministry.
That is the perfect distinction. They were the mobile unit.
Got it.
And to find the men who could handle a traveling ministry in the 1830s, which meant sleeping in mud, walking through snow, facing mob violence, and often just going hungry, you couldn't just pick names out of a hat.
You needed tough people.
You needed veterans, men who had been tested.
Which brings us to Zion's camp. Now, if you grew up in the faith, you have probably heard that term.
Oh, sure.
And honestly, it sounds like a summer youth retreat. You know, welcome to Zion's camp, grab your lanyard and a water bottle.
I assure you there were no lanyards.
No lanyards.
And the water bottles were mostly empty.
Right. Now, this was a paramilitary expedition. And this is the part of the history that really blew my mind.
It is intense.
There is a direct line between the men chosen for the 70 and the men who survived this specific march.
It is the defining filter for the calling. In 1834, about a year before this Kirtland meeting we started with, Joseph led a group of men from Ohio to Missouri to redeem Zion.
Okay, and what does redeem Zion mean in this context?
Essentially, they were going to help saints who had been violently driven from their homes in Jackson County, Missouri.
And we really need to pause on the logistics here because it is so easy for us to just gloss over Ohio to Missouri when we have cars and airplanes today.
Oh, it's a very different beast on foot.
I actually looked it up. That is roughly the distance from New York City to Denver.
Wow.
And they didn't take a Greyhound bus.
No, they walked. It was about 900 miles there and 900 miles back.
So an 1,800-mile round trip.
Exactly. And remember, this was in the sweltering summer heat and humidity of the Midwest.
1,800 miles. I mean, I get cranky if I have to park at the back of the grocery store lot.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
Imagine doing that with poor shoes. Some of them were literally walking barefoot by the end of the trip.
Barefoot for hundreds of miles.
Yes. They had limited food, bad water, and the constant threat of cholera.
Which actually swept through the camp, right?
It did. It was devastating. And knowing that at the end of the march, you might actually have to fight a literal battle, they were marching straight into hostile territory.
That is the ultimate crucible.
Yeah.
And here is the fascinating twist of history that I love from our sources.
What is up?
Militarily, Zion's camp was often viewed as a complete failure.
Yes, it was.
They didn't fight the battle they expected to fight. They didn't get the land back immediately. They basically just turned around and marched home.
So from the outside looking at the stats, it looks like a disaster, a massive waste of time, money, and shoe leather.
Exactly. But Joseph Smith later said, essentially, you don't understand, God didn't want a battle. He wanted a specialized workforce.
He needed to know who would be loyal when things were absolutely miserable.
There is a quote we found in the source that says, the sacrifice of these men qualified them.
The sacrifice qualified them. I love that.
It wasn't their knowledge of Hebrew or their ability to quote Isaiah from memory. It was the fact that they walked 1,800 miles, got tired and didn't quit.
That is it right there. It is the ultimate vetting process. When Joseph Smith stood up in that meeting in 1835 to call the 70, he wasn't looking at a stack of resumes or checking their tithing records.
He was looking at faces he had seen covered in mud.
Exactly. He knew who would complain when the food ran out, and he knew who had shared their last piece of bread.
Talk about having skin in the game.
Quite literally. They had proven they can handle the road.
So let's go back to that room in Kirtland, February 1835. The veterans are gathered. The mood is expectant. Joseph starts pointing people out.
This is a great moment.
This scene is just so human to me. He turns to Brigham Young first.
Right. He tells Brigham, you are to be one of them, meaning the 12 apostles, which is a huge moment in history, obviously.
But then almost immediately he turns to Brigham's brother, Joseph Young.
Yeah.
And the dynamic shifts completely. He says, and you are to be a president of the 70.
And you just have to imagine Joseph Young's reaction in that moment.
Right, because Brigham gets apostle. Everyone knows what that is.
Exactly. It is right there in the Bible, Peter, James, John. It is a position of high prestige.
And Joseph Young gets 70.
Yeah.
He is probably thinking, thanks, Joseph. What is that?
Legitimately. The historical record notes that at this time, no one knew who the 70s were.
No one knew.
No one. It was a completely restored concept. It hadn't existed in Western Christianity as a functioning office for nearly 2,000 years.
So they were essentially building the plane while flying it. Or I guess building the wagon while pulling it.
They really were. And since they didn't have a general handbook of instructions or a corporate intranet, they did the only thing they could do.
They opened the Bible.
Exactly. They had to reverse engineer the job description from the ancient texts.
So if I'm Joseph Young standing there, confused in my worn-out boots, where am I looking? What parts of the Bible explain my new job?
You actually have to start way back in the Old Testament, the book of Numbers. Moses. And this is really the original burnout story.
How so?
Well, Moses is trying to lead the children of Israel through the wilderness. It is a massive group of people. There is constant complaining, and it is just a logistical nightmare.
Sounds like leading a very large, very cranky startup.
Exactly. Moses is breaking under the strain. He is basically the CEO who refuses to delegate.
And the Lord steps in and says, this is too heavy for you.
Yes. In Numbers chapter 11, the specific instruction is to gather 70 men of the elders of Israel that they may stand there with thee.
Stand there with thee. I really love that phrasing.
It is powerful, isn't it?
It doesn't say take over for thee or replace thee. It says stand with.
It is a support structure. It is all about bearing the burden so the prophet doesn't get crushed under the weight of it all.
That makes a lot of sense.
There is actually a fantastic painting by Jacob DeWitt from 1739 that depicts this very moment. It shows Moses surrounded by these 70 elders.
So it is visualizing that this isn't some new idea Joseph Smith just invented?
Right. It is an ancient pattern of shared governance.
Okay, so that is the Old Testament foundation, administrative support. But clearly, the 1835 calling was about more than just administration. They were missionaries.
They were, and for that part of the job description, you have to jump forward to the New Testament, Luke chapter 10.
This is where Jesus appoints the 70?
Yes. Most people focus on the 12 disciples, but Luke specifically records that the Lord appointed other 70 also.
Also, meaning in addition to the 12.
Correct. And look at the specific instructions he gives them. He sends them 2 and 2 before his face into every city and place.
So that is the model. The 12 are the witnesses at the center, but the 70 are the advanced team.
They are the harvesters. The 12 couldn't physically go to every single city in Judea.
Just like the 12 in 1835 couldn't go to every town in Ohio or Missouri or England.
Exactly. They needed a multiplier effect.
So when the source material talks about the restored order in the 70, it is literally restoring that multiplier.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Joseph is saying, we are doing exactly what Moses did and exactly what Jesus did. We are scaling the work.
And that context changes everything for those men in the room. Suddenly, Joseph Young isn't just the other brother getting a lesser calling.
Not at all. He is stepping into a role that Jesus himself established to ensure the gospel could reach the very edges of the map.
It is incredible how consistent the pattern is across history. You have the leader, Moses, Jesus, Joseph. You have the inner circle, Aaron the 12. And then you have the 70 to actually execute the mission.
It is almost like a fractal. The pattern repeats because the problem repeats.
The work is always bigger than the workman.
Exactly. You always need more hands.
Which brings us to today. Because if the work was too big for 12 men in 1835,
Yeah.
it is definitely too big for 12 men in the 2020s.
Oh, without a doubt. The church is global now. We are talking millions of members and thousands of stakes.
It is a completely different scale.
Mm.
And the 70 has evolved to match that scale.
It had to.
This is where the terminology gets a little tricky for people, I think. We hear about general authority 70s and area 70s.
Right.
To the outsider or even just the casual member, a 70 is a 70. What is the actual functional difference between the two?
The easiest way to think of it is like the difference between a federal official and a state official.
Okay, I like that analogy.
A general authority 70 has a global mandate. They are the general authorities. They can be sent anywhere in the world.
So they are fully mobile.
Yes. One year, they might be presiding over the church in West Africa, the next year in the Philippines, and the next working at headquarters in Salt Lake City.
Got it. They have the authority to act in the name of the church globally.
Exactly. They are the global troubleshooters.
The nervous system connecting the head to the body.
That is a great way to put it. Then on the other hand, you have Area 70s. Their authority is geographic.
Meaning they stay put.
Mostly, yes. An Area 70 in Brazil has the authority to preside and act within Brazil. They live in their own homes, and they usually keep their day jobs.
Oh, so they aren't full-time clergy in the same way.
Right. But they provide that same high-level leadership within their specific assigned region.
So they are the local experts.
Mm-hmm.
They know the culture, the language, the specific challenges of that area better than anyone flying in from headquarters would.
Exactly. And this structure allows the church to be both global and local simultaneously. You have the consistent doctrine coming from the general authorities, but the local application coming from the Area 70s.
Because the Area 70s know exactly what the saints in their region actually need.
Precisely.
And above all of this, overseeing the 70s, you still have the Quorum of the 12 in the First Presidency.
Right. The core structure hasn't changed. It is just expanded.
To make sure everyone is on the same page, the First Presidency is the president of the church and his 2 counselors, right?
That is correct. They set the direction. The 12 apostles hold the keys to direct the work globally. And the 70, well, they are the ones who go out and actually make it happen on the ground.
You can actually see this entire structure visualized. The source mentions the official portrait of church leadership taken on October 24, 2025.
Yes. If you look at that portrait, you see the First Presidency, the 12, and then rows and rows of general authority 70s.
It really hits home how much the organization has grown. The research mentions a specific 3-fold charge for the 70 today. Special witnesses of Christ proclaim the gospel and build up the church.
It is that special witness part that really stands out to me. While the apostles are special witnesses of the name of Christ to all the world, the 70 are also called to be special witnesses.
So it isn't just an administrative desk job.
No, their primary job isn't administration, even though they do handle a lot of it. It is testimony.
Everything else, the training, the meetings, the travel, is just a vehicle for bearing witness of Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
It is so interesting to see how that 1835 confusion of who are these guys has turned into this massive, highly structured global network.
It is a huge transformation.
You can look at an org chart today and see quorums of 70 assigned to literally every corner of the planet.
But, and I think this is the crucial point, despite the corporate-looking structure and the suits and the organization charts, the heart of it is still exactly the same as it was in the mud of Zion's camp.
So,
It is about the willingness to go.
the I'm available factor.
Exactly. Whether you are a general authority leaving your career to serve for the rest of your life, or an Area 70 driving 4 hours to a state conference on a weekend, it is fundamentally about sacrifice.
The text we look at pivots really hard to this philosophy at the end. It reminds us that this isn't just about titles or positions.
Right. It quotes Doctrine and Covenants 59, verse 5. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy might, mind, and strength, and in the name of Jesus Christ thou shalt serve him.
Heart, might, mind, and strength. Think about how literally that applied to the Zion's camp guys.
Oh, yeah. They gave their strength by walking until their feet literally bled.
And they gave their heart by leaving their families for months on end.
And today, you might not be walking to Missouri, but you are asked to give your mind, like your professional skills or your planning ability.
Or your might in the form of emotional resilience.
The discussion in the source makes a really important point here. It says that while the office of 70 is limited to a few specific men, the principle of the 70 applies to absolutely everyone.
The principles of shared burden.
Yes. The church is a lay organization. There is no professional clergy at the local level.
The bishop is a volunteer. The Relief Society president is a volunteer. The nursery leader is a volunteer.
And sometimes the nursery leader feels like they are walking 1,800 miles, let's be honest.
Oh, the nursery is its own Zion's camp for sure.
It really is. But the point is, if everyone just sat back and waited for the prophet to do everything, the church would collapse in a day.
The growth of the church, which was highlighted in that October 2021 General Conference video reference in the source, is only possible because millions of people step up and say, I will stand there with thee.
It is the ultimate democratization of the ministry. Moses was burning out because he tried to be the hero.
Right.
The system only works when you realize it isn't about heroes. It is about helpers.
And that brings us back to the ultimate model. The notes explicitly state that Jesus Christ remains the head of the church and directs his chosen servants.
The 70 aren't replacing Jesus. They are pointing people to him. They are the 2x2 messengers clearing the way.
I really like that perspective. It takes all the bureaucracy out of it. It isn't about climbing a corporate ladder within the church.
Not at all.
In fact, if you look at what these men actually go through, the relentless travel, the public scrutiny, the pure exhaustion, it isn't really a ladder you want to climb unless you are driven by something entirely different.
It is definitely not for the glory. It is for the harvest.
So let's wrap this up and look at the big picture for you listening. We started in 1835 with a room full of tired, confused veterans.
Veterans who had just survived a quote-unquote failed mission.
Right. They get a title they don't even understand based on an ancient pattern from Moses and Jesus, and they are told to go out and scale the church.
And because they said yes, and because they kept walking, the structure held. It expanded. And now it supports a massive global faith.
It is a pretty powerful legacy for a muddy hike in 1834.
It truly is. But I think the question the material leaves us with is the most important part of this whole deep dive.
It is.
It isn't just about admiring their hike.
Right. The source poses this really provocative question at the end. It asks, what do you think is asked of us today that is hard and requires sacrifice for the benefit of others?
That is the real takeaway here. We aren't marching to Missouri. Most of us aren't ever being called as general authorities.
But we all have a Zion's camp.
Exactly. We all have that thing that requires us to walk 1,800 miles, metaphorically speaking.
Maybe it is a difficult relationship you're trying to heal. Maybe it is a chronic health challenge. Or maybe it is just the daily grind of serving in a local calling that you feel completely unqualified for.
Or maybe it is simply the sacrifice of time. In a modern world that constantly screams optimize for yourself, the spirit of the 70 asks us to optimize for others.
It asks, are you willing to be the one who shows up?
Are you willing to stand with them?
That is the true definition of leadership in this context. It isn't being above anyone, it is standing with them.
Beautifully said. I think that is a perfect place to leave it. It transforms a piece of 19th century organizational history into a very real personal challenge for all of us today.
Absolutely. History is only useful when we focus on the application.
Well, thank you for walking through this deep dive with me. It gives a whole new depth to the term 70 for me.
My pleasure. It is a fantastic topic to explore.
And to you listening, thanks for joining us. We hope this gave you something to think about regarding your own 1,800-mile march.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.